Jason Martin had spent the last 6 years convincing himself that his old life was buried somewhere in the shadows of Paris, the city he now called home. His tech company had flourished, his personal fortune had grown, and he owned a sleek penthouse overlooking the Seine. By all outward measures, he seemed to have everything a man could possibly want. But none of that could stop the past from colliding with his present the moment he caught sight of a small silver heart-shaped locket gleaming under the waning sunlight worn by a little girl with golden hair and striking green eyes that made his heart lurch. A jolt of recognition shot through him. He knew that locket. He had given one just like it, years ago, to Aurelia. He froze in the middle of the park, footsteps falling silent on the gravel walkway. The hum of distant traffic on the boulevard, the flutter of pigeons around the fountain, everything faded. 6 years. For 6 years, he pushed Aurelia out of his mind, trained himself not to wonder where she was or why she vanished. But now, here she was, shattering his carefully maintained facade of control. The girl wearing the locket wasn't alone. Standing next to her was another child, identical in height and features, right down to the lively gleam in her eyes. 2 little girls giggled and danced around the fountain, lost in their own world. Jason's pulse thundered as he took a hesitant step closer, trying to see them more clearly. The reflection of the setting sun played off the water, lending the children's hair a halo-like glow. They looked so familiar, the shape of their faces, the tilt of their chins. And when one of them swiveled around and stared right at him, the recognition crashed over him like a tidal wave. These girls had his golden hair. They had his gaze, too, albeit tinted with Auria's warmth. Before he could process the implications, a soft voice broke through. "Mia, Chloe, time to go." Jason turned, his breath catching in his throat. Sitting on a nearby bench with a small bag by her side was Aurelia. Her once long hair was now shoulder length, framing a face that looked both stronger and more fragile than he remembered. She glanced up, and their eyes met. 6 years of silence and heartache flooded that brief connection. He saw shock, guilt, maybe even longing flicker across her expression. She knew he recognized her. More than that, she knew he saw the 2 little girls with her, girls who bore an uncanny resemblance to him. One of the children, Mia, he gathered from the name Aurelia had called, came running over to tug at her mother's hand. Chloe soon followed. Aurelia stood slowly, never letting her gaze slip away from Jason. He noticed her knuckles turn white where she gripped the edge of the bench. It looked like she wanted to flee but was somehow pinned in place. His heart was hammering in his chest when he forced himself to approach, each step weighted with the memory of being left behind so many years ago. He stopped just a few feet away, swallowing the surge of anger and confusion that threatened to spill out. "Aurelia," he said quietly, his tone controlled, though every muscle in his body felt taut. She blinked once, as though to confirm he was real, and her lips parted. "Jason." It was only a whisper. Hearing his name on her lips again made everything he tried to bury claw its way back to the surface, the lingering pain, the anger, the heartache, and the unbearable sense of loss. The 2 little girls stood by their mother, peering curiously up at him. Jason looked at them for a long moment, his thoughts a tempest of disbelief and betrayal. They had his features, his coloring, his eyes. He felt sick at the realization, they were his children, weren't they? How could this be possible without him ever knowing? 1,000 questions tangled in his mind, but he couldn't bring himself to ask them in front of 2 innocent faces. Aurelia seemed to read the conflict in his expression. Quickly, she whispered to her daughters, "Mia, Chloe, go play by the fountain for a moment. I'll be right there." They obeyed, bounding off with all the carefree energy of 5-year-olds, leaving Jason and Aurelia standing in uncomfortable silence. As soon as the children were out of earshot, Jason looked her in the eye, voice low and tight. "Are they mine?" Auria's fingers tightened on the bag she was holding. For a moment, she couldn't look at him. Then she gave a single nod. "Yes." He'd known it, yet hearing it confirmed pummeled him harder than he'd expected. His mind reeled with what that word implied: 6 years of not knowing, 6 years of missing out on everything that came with fatherhood. His jaw clenched. How could you hide this from me? Her eyes closed briefly, and when she opened them again, she looked both resolute and broken. Not here, Jason. Please. He followed her gaze to where Mia and Chloe were laughing by the fountain. It took everything in him not to explode right then, but he understood that the girls shouldn't bear witness to whatever storm was brewing between their parents. Aurelia glanced around, then reached into her bag and pulled out a slip of paper. She scribbled an address and handed it to him. Meet me here in an hour. Please. Jason stared down at the note, the edges crumpling under the force of his grip. Don't run, he warned, voice cold with equal parts anger and hurt. I won't let you just disappear again. She nodded, and for the first time, he saw tears brimming in her eyes. I know, she said. Then she walked away to gather the children, each small hand in hers as she guided them out of the park. Jason watched them go, still stunned by the reality he had just uncovered. His mind churned with questions he couldn't yet voice. He had spent 6 years thinking she was gone, that she had chosen to leave him behind without a word. He had scoured Paris at first, hiring private investigators, calling old contacts only to come up empty-handed. Eventually, he convinced himself that she must have wanted nothing to do with him anymore. Yet here she was, living a completely different life with 2 little girls, his daughters. Exactly 1 hour later, Jason found himself at a small, tucked-away cafe near Saint-Germain. Despite his anger and turmoil, he was punctual to a fault. The place was cozy, filled with soft lighting and the aroma of freshly ground coffee beans. It reminded him of something Aurelia would have liked, back when she used to talk about opening her own cafe one day. She was seated at a corner table, looking out through a foggy window as if lost in thought. When he slid into the chair across from her, she met his gaze, and he saw the flicker of guilt that matched the storm inside him. You came, she said softly, fingers wrapped around a mug of coffee as if it were a lifeline. Did you think I wouldn't? He replied, voice clipped. She shrugged, eyes still lowered. I wasn't sure. I wouldn't blame you if you wanted nothing to do with me. Jason let out a breath, trying to keep his emotions in check. You don't get to make that choice for me. Start talking. I want to know everything. Aurelia inhaled shakily, setting the coffee cup down. I was scared, she began, her voice trembling. I found out I was pregnant after we ended things. You were so focused on your career. You never let anything stand in your way, no matter the cost. And I feared that if I told you, you'd stay only out of obligation. That it would ruin you. Or ruin us both. You didn't even give me a chance, he said, hands curling into fists on top of the table. You just left. Her eyes glistened with tears. I know. And I'll never be able to undo that. I thought I was doing the right thing. He leaned back in his chair, struggling to reconcile the woman he loved with this person who had kept something so monumental from him. The sting of betrayal wouldn't leave him. So, he said, after a heavy silence, where do we go from here? Aurelia shifted in her seat, glancing at the darkening sky beyond the window. They deserve to know who you are. I don't want to keep you from them anymore. Not now. Jason swallowed. He hadn't expected that admission, but he also realized that was the only path forward if he intended to be part of Mia's and Chloe's lives. The father in him, new as he was to the title, was resolute. I want to meet them, he stated firmly, ignoring the sting of lost years. She nodded, relief mingling with apprehension. Tomorrow, if you're free. I'll give you the address. The next day, Jason arrived in a quiet, residential part of the city he rarely ventured into. It was a far cry from his sleek penthouse near the Seine neighborhood of modest, neatly kept apartments, small local bakeries, and streets lined with vibrant potted flowers. His heart thundered as he stood outside the door Aurelia had directed him to. He knocked. Aurelia opened the door, and behind her, Mia and Chloe stood side by side, as though unsure if they should stay or run. Their identical features, blonde hair, greenish eyes, made Jason's throat tighten. Up close, they were undeniably his. Aurelia spoke gently, "Girls, this is Jason." Mia, her tiny brow furrowed, stared at him. Chloe just blinked, twisting the hem of her shirt between her fingers. Jason cleared his throat. "Hi." Chloe was the first to respond with a quiet, "Hello." Mia, however, seemed a bit warier. Aurelia knelt, placing a reassuring hand on Mia's shoulder. "Remember I told you I had a friend who used to be very important to me? Well, Jason is that friend. Why didn't he visit?" Mia asked plainly, eyes fixed on Jason. He looked at Aurelia before taking a slow breath. "Because I didn't know I needed to," he said gently. The little girl frowned, turning her gaze to her mother for confirmation. Auria's lips pressed into a sad smile. "I made a mistake, Mia. I didn't tell Jason about you and Chloe. But now he is here, and he wants to get to know you both." Chloe shifted her weight from foot to foot, then tugged on Mia's sleeve as if reminding her they were in this together. Mia considered her sister's silent cue, then nodded, though the acceptance in her eyes was guarded. Aurelia ushered them all inside a small living room. A couple of stuffed animals lay on the sofa, and children's drawings were taped to the walls, a riot of color and scribbled lines that read MIA and CHLOE in big, proud letters. Toys were scattered about, and the place smelled of something warm and comforting, maybe bread from the bakery down the street. Jason lowered himself onto an armchair, feeling oddly like a guest in a world that should have been partly his all along. The girls perched on the couch, legs swinging, stealing curious glances at him. Trying to break the tension, he said, "I'm not used to seeing so many colors in one room. My place is, well, a little boring by comparison." Chloe giggled. "Mommy likes color." Mia asked, "Do you like dogs?" Jason blinked at the abrupt question. Yes, I do. I travel a lot for work, so I've never had one. But maybe someday." Mia exchanged a look with her sister, then shrugged, as if to say he might be okay, but she wasn't entirely convinced yet. Aurelia offered Jason a small, encouraging smile that seemed to say, "Keep trying." He spent the next hour learning the small details of their lives, how Mia loved fairy tales and Chloe wanted to become a dancer. He discovered that Chloe had a natural flair for art, and Mia was the more introverted but fiercely imaginative one. The more they talked, the more Jason's heart twisted at everything he had missed. Aurelia mostly listened, interjecting only to fill in bits of background. By the time he left, Jason felt like he was stepping away from a place that felt oddly like home. He wasn't sure how he could make up for 6 lost years, but he knew one thing: he was determined to try. A few days later, in an effort to speed up that getting to know you process, Jason invited them out for ice cream at a little shop near the Jardin du Luxembourg, a place that catered to families, with pastel-colored furniture and a big chalkboard listing dozens of flavors. Mia and Chloe stood mesmerized by the display case, pressed up against the glass as they studied every swirl of bright pink, chocolate brown, and mint green. "I want strawberry," Chloe announced, pressing her finger to the glass. "With extra sprinkles." Mia pursed her lips, more subdued. "Chocolate chip or maybe vanilla with caramel." She glanced between them as though deciding the fate of the world. Finally, she sighed. "Chocolate chip." Aurelia tried not to laugh. "She always takes her ice cream selection very seriously," she explained to Jason. He smiled, actually enjoying the moment. "I completely understand. I have trouble deciding on big choices too, he joked. Once everyone had a cone, they settled around a small table on the sidewalk terrace. People strolled by with dogs or with shopping bags, and the gentle hum of the city served as a backdrop for a surprisingly relaxed family scene. So, Chloe began, eyeing Jason's attire. Do you always wear suits? Jason glanced down at his sharply tailored jacket and tie. More or less. It's my work uniform. Mia, between bites of her chocolate chip, wrinkled her nose. That's weird. Aurelia laughed behind her hand. He's fancy, she teased. Chloe giggled, leaning forward in her chair. Are you super rich? Mom said you have a very tall apartment. Jason cleared his throat. Well, yes, my place is on the top floors of a building by the Seine. And I guess you could say I'm doing okay. Mia still seemed unimpressed. Do you have a pool in your building? Jason nodded. I do. Chloe's eyes lit up. Really? A big one? Can we see it someday? Their mother shot her a look of gentle warning, but Jason just chuckled. Maybe one day soon, he said, genuinely wanting them to visit. As they ate their ice cream, the girls took turns peppering him with more questions. Did he like to travel? What was his favorite color? Did he know any magic tricks? Each inquiry was innocent, reminding him just how much he had missed. He felt a mixture of warmth and sorrow, but the warmth was winning out. That night, Jason found it impossible to sleep. His mind replayed every small detail of the day, the pink smudge of ice cream on Mia's chin, Chloe's animated hand gestures as she described her dance lessons, and the softness in Auria's gaze when she watched their daughters interact with him. A part of him wanted to resent Aurelia for keeping this family away from him for so long, but every time he saw her with the girls, he understood she had her own reasons, misguided or not. Gradually, Jason became woven into their daily routines. He learned that Mia loved a particular adventure novel, the kind with pirates and hidden treasure, and that Chloe was obsessed with a certain animated princess movie. They had dinner together in Auria's snug dining room, where the walls displayed a few framed photos of the girls as toddlers, pictures that simultaneously warmed and pained him. One evening, after a meal of lasagna that Aurelia claimed was her specialty, they gathered in the living room. A stack of books sat near the couch, and the coffee table was scattered with crayons and half-finished drawings. Chloe and Mia argued over which movie to watch for family night. Chloe insisted, I picked last time. Mia retorted, no, you picked 2 weeks ago. It's my turn. They both turned to Jason. Chloe pouted, Dad, tell her I get to pick. Jason felt a jolt at the word dad. He fought back the sudden wave of emotion and cleared his throat. What if we watch both? He offered, trying to sound nonchalant. One tonight, and one next time. Mia scowled. You might fall asleep, she pointed out, crossing her arms as though challenging him. I don't fall asleep, Jason insisted, feigning offense. Aurelia raised her eyebrows. He definitely falls asleep, she teased, prompting a giggle from Chloe. Mia eyed him skeptically. If you do, then I get to pick tomorrow, too. He chuckled and held out his hand for her to shake. Deal. Soon enough, they piled onto the sofa, Chloe curled up against Aurelia, Mia sitting carefully beside Jason, a pillow separating them at first. Yet as the movie played on, Mia gradually eased closer. He made sure not to shift too much, lest she rethink her decision. Eventually, her head rested against his shoulder. Jason forced himself to breathe evenly, though inside, his heart brimmed with a quiet, poignant joy he could hardly name. From across the couch, Aurelia met his eyes. She mouthed a silent, "You're doing great." He swallowed against the lump in his throat, giving a tiny nod. When the movie ended, Chloe was already half asleep, and Mia stifled a yawn. That was fun, she murmured, sounding as though she'd never admit it again. Jason kissed the tops of both girls' heads, a new gesture, tentative but heartfelt. Aurelia offered him a grateful smile as she shepherded them to bed. While she was gone, he stood in the living room, gazing at the children's drawings pinned to the fridge, at a row of small shoes by the door. It struck him that this was what a home felt like, a place alive with everyday chaos and comfort. Aurelia returned quietly, arms folded around herself as though bracing for whatever came next. Jason turned to her, still grappling with the depth of everything he'd learned in the past weeks. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "About all of it." He exhaled, letting his guarded posture relax a fraction. "They're amazing," he managed. "They're perfect." Her voice was thick with emotion. "I know." He wanted to talk about the lost years, about whether they could ever repair what lay between them. But now wasn't the moment. The girls were asleep, and outside, the Parisian streetlights cast a golden glow through the curtains. Something unspoken hung in the air, hope, maybe. Or the start of forgiveness. He reached for the door, turning back before leaving. "They called me Dad tonight," he said softly. "I never expected that to happen so quickly." Aurelia nodded, eyes shining. "They've been waiting a long time, in their own way." Jason paused, the old anger resurfacing for a split second, but then he let it go. There would be time to hash out the past, time to hold her accountable for vanishing. For now, it was enough to know that Mia and Chloe wanted him around. By the time another few weeks rolled by, Jason had rearranged his work schedule to be more present. He cut down late-night meetings, delegated more responsibilities at his company, something he wouldn't have dreamed of a year ago. He spent afternoons in the park with Mia and Chloe, listening to their laughter echo off the old statues and chestnut trees. One evening, he arrived at Auria's for dinner. The girls were in the living room again, engrossed in a puzzle on the rug. Aurelia was setting the table, wearing an apron smudged with flour. A pot of something fragrant simmered on the stove. He paused in the doorway, letting the sense of homeliness sink in. When dinner ended, the girls dragged him into an argument about which story to read before bed. Chloe wanted an illustrated fairy tale, Mia preferred her new adventure book. Eventually, they let him read one chapter from each, a compromise that satisfied everyone. After finishing the second chapter, Mia set her book aside. She looked at him with wide, vulnerable eyes. "Are you going to stay?" He ruffled her hair gently. "I can stay for a while, if that's okay with your mom." She shook her head, misunderstanding. "I mean, stay forever." Jason felt a strange tightness in his chest. He glanced at Aurelia, who was standing in the doorway, arms crossed protectively, listening. His gaze shifted back to Mia's earnest face. "I want to," he answered honestly. "I really do." She studied him, as if trying to detect any trace of dishonesty. Slowly, she moved closer and wrapped her arms around him in a tentative hug. He held perfectly still, not wanting to break the moment. Chloe, never one to be outdone, immediately scrambled over to latch onto them as well. Aurelia stayed where she was, eyes glistening. Jason felt his throat constrict as he realized how much this meant, how significant it was that his once wary daughter now willingly embraced him. He pressed a light kiss to Mia's temple, his voice low. "I promise I'm not going anywhere." The rest of the evening blurred into small, tender moments, Aurelia ushering the girls to bed, Jason tidying the living room, a silent understanding passing between him and Aurelia as they met in the hallway. They didn't speak about the future of their relationship, they didn't talk about romance or lost time. But the possibility hung there, warm and real. Months passed, and the changes in Jason's life became permanent fixtures. His perspective on success evolved, too. Where he once measured achievement by corporate milestones and balance sheets, he now saw it reflected in the glow of two little girls' smiles when he surprised them after school, or in the soft hush of a story before bedtime. He and Aurelia were still working through their own complicated history. He still felt pangs of anger at times, and she still wore guilt like a quiet shadow. Yet with each passing day, they found moments of shared laughter, of easy conversation, of a renewed connection that hinted at something stronger taking root. The real triumph of this new life, however, was found in small gestures. Like Mia gently placing her head on Jason's shoulder while they watched a movie, or Chloe instinctively calling him Dad whenever she was excited about a new drawing she'd made in art class. Even Aurelia, who once believed she had to run away to spare him, began to trust again. It wasn't that everything was suddenly perfect. No magical solutions had come along to erase the years of confusion, pain, or regret. But each shared dinner, each Sunday at the park, each bedtime story read in soft lamplight was evidence that they were healing. Jason was there now, truly there, and with every day he remained, the bond grew stronger. In the end, the most powerful part of this story was the fact that love proved itself in ordinary moments rather than dramatic displays. Jason no longer mourned the 6 years he had lost. Instead, he chose to be fully present for every day that lay ahead. Mia and Chloe saw his commitment, and their acceptance was all he needed to keep trying. Aurelia, too, watched his steady presence and found hope. They might not erase the past, but they could build a future even if it was step by cautious step. In those quiet, meaningful gestures, like Mia finally trusting him enough to curl up beside him with her favorite book in hand, he saw that some things couldn't be faked or forced. They had to be earned. And Jason Martin intended to keep earning them, one moment at a time. It was the kind of fulfillment he'd never known he needed, but that he now realized he couldn't live without. He had learned that success was never truly about money or status. Real success was about being there for the people who mattered, even if it took years to find his way back to them. And so, although the road ahead was uncharted, Jason faced it with a heart far less guarded than before. Because for the first time in a very long time, he felt something he once believed he'd lost, a sense of belonging and the promise that, despite everything, he was home. In the months following the profound personal transformation of Leonardo, Aurelia, and their family, an unexpected ripple effect began to spread throughout their community, a story of redemption, reconciliation, and the true meaning of success that resonated far beyond the walls of their home. Local residents, inspired by Leonardo's willingness to put aside his high-powered career to invest in what mattered most, started sharing their own stories of neglected relationships and lost time. Neighborhood gatherings, once centered solely on casual conversation, evolved into open discussions about family, responsibility, and the importance of genuine human connection. Community centers organized weekend events where parents and children participated in creative workshops and storytelling sessions, using the narrative of Leonardo's rediscovery of fatherhood as a catalyst for change. Schools incorporated the family's journey into lessons on empathy and personal growth. Teachers spoke about how facing past mistakes can lead to a brighter future when one chooses to learn from them, and counselors encouraged students to embrace vulnerability as a strength rather than a weakness. Educational programs began emphasizing the idea that success should not be measured solely by financial gain or professional accolades, but by the quality of one's relationships and the positive impact one has on others. Local media, too, caught wind of the story. Newspaper columns and radio segments highlighted how a man once consumed by ambition had found a renewed sense of purpose through his children, sparking conversations on work-life balance and mental well-being. Community leaders organized public forums where families could discuss the challenges of modern life, juggling demanding careers with the need to be present for loved ones and explore practical strategies to bridge that gap. In one such forum held at a modest civic center near the heart of the neighborhood, Leonardo himself was invited to share his experience. Speaking with quiet conviction, he recounted the painful years spent chasing success at the expense of personal connection and how rediscovering his role as a father not only mended a broken past but also paved the way for a more compassionate future. His words encouraged others to re-examine their priorities, to reach out to estranged family members, or even simply to pause and appreciate the everyday moments that often pass unnoticed. Aurelia's journey from isolation and fear to openness and trust further underscored the educational message that healing is possible even after years of silence, and that the courage to confront one's own shortcomings can be a powerful lesson for the entire community. Parents began to hold family nights not just as a routine but as a celebration of togetherness, where each story shared was a stepping stone toward building a supportive and understanding community. Ultimately, the family's story became a beacon of hope, a reminder that while life's challenges can sometimes push us apart, they also offer the opportunity to come together in ways that enrich not only individual lives but also the collective spirit. The narrative of Leonardo, Aurelia, and their daughters taught everyone that true strength lies in our capacity to forgive, to learn, and to continuously show up for those who matter most. It was a living lesson that real success is measured by the love we nurture and the community we build around us, a legacy that would inspire generations to come. In addition to the local initiatives, several nonprofit organizations recognized the transformative power of the family's story and launched campaigns promoting mental health and family unity. Workshops and seminars were organized to help parents learn communication skills, stress management techniques, and the art of active listening, with the family's journey serving as an inspirational case study. Community art projects emerged where residents were encouraged to depict their visions of a harmonious family life, fostering creative expression and a sense of shared purpose. Moreover, local businesses began to sponsor events that celebrated work-life balance. Corporate leaders, inspired by Leonardo's courageous shift from relentless ambition to nurturing personal relationships, introduced flexible working hours and family-inclusive policies. These changes not only improved employee morale but also contributed to a healthier, more connected community, illustrating that economic success and personal fulfillment are not mutually exclusive. Finally, the ripple effect of the story reached even further. University research groups started examining the long-term benefits of familial support on individual well-being and community resilience. Their findings, later published in academic journals, highlighted that communities built on empathy, understanding, and open dialogue tended to be more innovative and socially cohesive. This scholarly recognition further solidified the narrative's importance as not only a personal triumph but also a blueprint for societal progress, demonstrating that true education begins at home, with every small step taken toward nurturing one another.